We will kick things off, as they say. So, what are we going to talk about today? Today is another Tuesday. I really love Tuesdays, actually. I don't know why. I really enjoy these. I'm hoping that you guys do as well. Um, it's something. It's always something different every week. It's always a little bit of variety, and it gives us an opportunity to connect with each other. So and again support each other as well. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about the power of decisions. Decisions, as my friend Les Brown says. If you're not familiar with Les Brown, even though you've probably heard me talk about him many times, um, he's an amazing motivator. He's my go-to guy. If I'm ever feeling any way, shape, or form the need for some type of a motivation, some type of drive, or some type of push, he's the guy that I like to look for on YouTube. He's got some really stuff. He's got an amazing story. But, decisions can be a major challenge for all of us. We all have, well, the challenges that come with life. And unfortunately, a lot of times there's tough decisions that need to be made. And well, I think the more balanced, the more focused we are, I think the better place we're in to actually deal with those challenges and make better decisions. Because basically, your decisions, they're going to shape your destiny. It might sound oversimplistic, but I believe that. Now, I know we can't always make the right decisions. A lot of times you do the best you can with the hand you were dealt. But I think if you're conscious about it and you're not avoiding the decisions and you're doing the best you can with the hand you were dealt, well, I think it's going to greatly increase your chances of success in life, and helping you to design a life, and and to move you in the, I guess, in the direction of the destiny that you desire. But what I want to do is I want to start out with a little bit of Mel Robbins. So, as far as Mel Robbins goes, where are we at? Sorry, guys. I've lost you. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened there. I lost you there for just a minute. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to get things kicked off, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to play a clip there of if I can pull it up here. One of my favorites, Mel Robbins, and she's going to give us some good advice about making good decisions. So hopefully everybody can see that okay. And let me know if there's any problems hearing it, but you should be okay.
Do you make decisions with your heart, or do you make decisions with your head? And how the hell do you know? So this next question from Emily is a really, really great one for those of you that are struggling with making a decision. And it's a question about how do you know when you're listening to your heart or you're listening to your head? How do you know, what fear is real, in other words? And so she writes, I totally get how it is so important to listen to your inner wisdom and stop the inner chatter of self-doubt. But what happens, Mel, when the internal war is between what your heart feels and what your brain thinks and your inner wisdom is telling you? And so this is a question about, do you make decisions with your heart or do you make decisions with your head? And how the hell do you know? How do you know? In fact, I was just talking with my creative director, and she was sharing with me that a friend of hers is going through this terrible thing right now. It's not terrible. It's just what happens in life, where she knows that the relationship that she's in isn't right. They get along really well. Things are really easy, but in her heart, she knows it just isn't right. Those are the kinds of decisions that are really difficult to make. And so it gets to the heart of Emily's question, which is, how do I know whether to make a decision with my head or a decision with my heart? I'm the kind of person that believes you should always make decisions with your heart and soul. You can use your brain for math. You can use your brain to look at the fine print in a contract. But when it comes to the actual feel of the decision, you always want to go inward and check it against your heart and soul. How do you do that? Here's the simple test. Does the decision that you're about to make expand you, expand your future, or expand the possibilities of your life? If the answer is yes, then the decision is yes, no matter how terrifying it is. If you conversely look at the choice that you have to make, and the decision will shrink you, will silence you, will inhibit you in some way, then the answer is no. No matter how easy the decision is, no matter how safe the decision is, the answer is no. Now, one of the things I want to point out that when you start to use this, does it expand or does it shrink me? Does it open possibilities or does it keep things closed? Does it raise my voice or does it silence me, right? Is that there's always a short-term and a long-term impact to the decision. The short-term impact to making an expansive decision, a decision that's based in your heart and your soul, sometimes it's terrifying because sometimes it means moving or it means changing a job or changing a relationship or having a difficult conversation or starting something new. And those sorts of things are always uncomfortable. So brace for impact, put the force fields up, but make the decision anyway. Because the long-term impact of making a decision from your heart and soul, that is where the best life comes from. Because you're living for what's true for you, not what's safe in the moment. I hope that helps. And let me know how you use this expanse versus shrink scale in order to make decisions that you're facing right now. And don't forget, submit your questions to us by using the hashtag AskMel.
Ask Mel. Big fan of Mel, actually. Hopefully, I'm hoping you guys all actually listen to some of her stuff. She's got some really, really interesting things. And I like the way she puts things so simplistic. But I agree with that, what she's saying, as far as you make decisions with your heart. It doesn't always work 100% of the time, but then again, nothing works 100% of the time. But what we do, I believe, and this is what we've talked about before with the power of your purpose, I like to make decisions based on, is it moving me closer or further away than my definite major purpose? Again, my definite major purpose for me personally is to live my life to the best of my ability, on a daily, consistent basis as a happy, well-balanced, strong, independent man. So when I'm faced with a decision throughout the day, I often analyze it. And what I'll do is when I analyze it, I'll go in and I'll make a decision based on, is it moving me closer or further away, um, to my primary objective, which again is to live my life as a happy, well balanced, strong, independent man. And I would encourage you to do the same. So, but it's not even just about me, it's not about you. Remember, it's about the clients a lot of times that we're working with here. So, when you're working with a client, a lot of time you're going to be placed in a position where, well, you're going to have to help them in some way, shape, or form to make a decision. You're going to have to either guide them along, you're going to have to give them a little bit of a nudge, and it's not always easy because again, this is a form of non-directive counseling or consulting as far as I'm concerned. I don't like to tell people what to do, because I think ultimately people have to make their own decisions. But sometimes we're kind of put in that position where we do have to kind of guide people along. So I think that's a good strategy. If you're working with a client and you're put in a position where primarily you need to give them some advice because they're just flat out asking you, what should I do? No, ask them to stop and think about it. Is it going to move? If you take this action, or if you don't take this action, is it moving you closer or further away from your definite major purpose? Because that's your objective. That's what you're looking to achieve. So I think that's a good rule of thumb, and I think it's a good strategy to always have in your back pocket when you're working with clients. Because again, if you haven't yet, I give I guarantee you will be. You will be in a position where somebody is just flat out asking your advice. What should they do? And again, we don't like to tell people what to do because it's not really, you know, what we're here for. We're here to guide, support, and hold people accountable. But ultimately, you can always fall back on that. So, moving along, what do we got next?
Decisions.
We're going to cover a few things with Mel today. Sorry, I'm just going to move this out of the way, guys. Sorry, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's in my way. So, Mel Robbins, 10 rules for success. I got to admit, I struggled with this for a little bit. Was I going to put it up just based on the very first one she has there? Change your decisions. Because I had to think about it. What does she mean by that? What if you're making the right decisions? Why would you change it? So I can only assume that is if she's talking about if things aren't going the way you want them to go, if you're not producing the result that you're looking to achieve. It's like that old saying, if the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. I think that's what she's talking about there. If you keep making the same decisions and it's producing the results you don't want, well, simple, change your decision. So I'm assuming that's what she's talking about there. As far as listen to your gut, I'm a big believer in that personally, but I know it's not always accurate. I think you do have to use your head and you do have to analyze things and you have to look at the facts. You can't always go 100% of the time based on emotion. But I do believe that you need to listen to your gut. If it's just telling you this isn't right, I think you need to listen to it ultimately. But I don't believe that's all you have to do. I do believe that you have to go ahead and, again, you have to listen to your gut, but you got to think with your head. You got to analyze things. You got to look at everything objectively to the best of your ability. Then make your decision. Push yourself to the next level. Yeah, that's something we talk about all the time. Again, I always like to analyze things like this because I like to see if they're working in conjunction with what we're doing. And most of what she says does. Push yourself to the next level. Always be trying to become a better version. Always try to make progress. Again, it's not about perfection. It's just about that consistent progress that we're looking for. But that comes from pushing yourself to the next level. Take action. That's something that we've talked about countless times at this stage. Our whole system is based on that daily consistent action because it's the only thing that's ever going to produce the result. So again, get yourself to take that action. When you're working with a client, you got to keep reminding them that action is going to be required. Action is going to be what produces the result. I always like the saying, action cures fear. If somebody's procrastinating or if they find themselves, well, they're just almost paralyzed where they just can't, they don't know what to do, take action. Action will always cure fear. 100% of the time, you'll feel better. Follow your curiosity. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's good to be curious and it's good to look at things from different vantage points and it's good to go ahead and go down different paths and see what what you're going to end up with. Think positively. Yeah, you know me, I'm a big believer in positive thinking. Um, I don't think it's the be all and end all, but I do think, yeah, you need to think positively 100%. Don't give up on your dreams. That one, I don't know. I maybe it's just the wording. I don't really 100% agree with. But again, this is only. I don't have to agree with everything that everybody says, and neither do you. You can take it or you can leave it. You can agree with it or you don't. Um, it's just the word. Don't give up on your dreams. I think dreams sometimes dreams aren't realistic. If they're goals, that's different. You shouldn't give up on your goals. Goals are achievable. Goals have a date. Goals require action, and you can go ahead and push yourself to achieve them. Sometimes dreams, well, they're just meant to stay dreams. That's just my opinion. Um, know what you want. Again, you know how I feel about that. Know what you want is always the first step in achievement. You have to know exactly what your objective is, what you're looking to achieve. So yeah, I'm a big supporter in that statement there. Know what you want. Push yourself forward. Yeah. Here comes somebody trying to get in. Sorry, just gonna open up the door, let somebody in there. Hello, Zach. Thanks for joining. I thought you were already here. But yeah, know what you want. Push yourself forward and be honest with yourself. I like that one because I think a lot of times we're all guilty of it. A lot of times, well, maybe we're not always 100% honest um, with our abilities. We're not being honest as far as, are we taking enough action? Are we pushing ourselves hard enough? Are we doing what's required? Are we holding ourselves accountable? I suppose. So yeah, that's Mel Robbins' 10 rules for success, and a lot of those have to do all with the decision making process. But again, Mel Robbins, big fan. I strongly encourage you to check out some of her stuff. What else do we got? It's not moving for me. Okay. I'm not a product of my circumstances. I'm a product of my decisions. Stephen Covey. Very true. Something I agree very much. Again, it doesn't mean that you're not going to make the wrong decisions. We all do. We all make good decisions and we make bad decisions. I think the key to do, as far as, well, creating your circumstances, rather good or bad, well, the key is to make more good decisions than bad decisions to the best of your ability. And you're going to do that, again, by being focused, paying attention, taking that consistent action, ensuring that you're balanced, and again, living with purpose. But yeah, I do believe that. I think we're all basically, a product of our decisions. They stack up upon each, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. The decisions that we're making today, well, they're going to take us down a different path. And they're going to stack up on the decisions we made yesterday and the day before that, and the decisions we're going to make tomorrow. But yeah, I do believe that. Stephen Covey, another great one. But now I wanna listen to something a little bit different. This is a TED Talk, and it's all about the decision making process, but it's a different perspective. It's something, well, a couple of things that's very important to me personally, but also I think very relevant to what we're doing with our system. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to listen to this, and then I'll give you a little bit of, well, I guess, my insight on the whole thing. And
in ancient Greece, when anyone from slaves, soldiers, poets, and politicians needed to make a big decision on life's most important questions, like, should I get married, or should we embark on this voyage, or should our army advance into this territory, they all consulted the oracle. So this is how it worked. You would bring her a question and you would get on your knees, and then she would go into this trance. It would take a couple of days, and then eventually she would come out of it giving you her predictions as your answer. From the oracle bones of ancient China to ancient Greece to Mayan calendars, people have craved for prophecy in order to find out what's going to happen next. And that's because we all want to make the right decision. We don't want to miss something. The future is scary, so it's much nicer knowing that we can make a decision with some assurance of the outcome. But we have a new oracle, and its name is big data, or we call it Watson or deep learning or neural nets. And these are the kind of questions we ask of our oracle now. Like, what's the most efficient way to ship these phones from China to Sweden? Or what are the odds of my child being born with a genetic disorder? Or what are the sales volume you can predict for this product? I have a dog, her name is Elle, and she hates the rain. And I have tried everything to untrain
Hi,
her.
Patrick. Is all good? Because
I have failed at
I
this.
think
I also have to
I can't
consult
hear
the
anything.
oracle called
So I don't know if it's just me.
1 second there, guys. Sorry.
Dark Sky every time before we go on a walk. For
Sorry. Apologies. If you weren't able to hear that, you should have been. Was anybody else having a problem hearing that?
No, I got it. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, no, I think it was fine, Zach. I think it was just on your end. Sorry. Let me know if you guys are having a problem hearing it. I'll turn it up on this end, but you should be able to adjust your volume.
very accurate weather predictions in the next 10 minutes. So sweet. So because of all of this, our oracle is a $122 billion industry. Now, despite the size of this industry, the returns are surprisingly low. Investing in big data is easy, but using it is hard. Over 73% of big data projects aren't even profitable. And I have executives coming up to me saying, we're experiencing the same thing. We invested in some big data system and our employees aren't making better decisions, and they're certainly not coming up with more breakthrough ideas. So this is all really interesting to me because I'm a technology ethnographer. I study and I advise companies on the patterns of how people use technology. And one of my interest areas is data. So why is having more data not helping us make better decisions? Especially for companies who have all these resources to invest in these big data systems. Why isn't it getting any easier for them? So I've witnessed the struggle firsthand. In 2009, I started a research position with Nokia. And at the time, Nokia was one of the largest cell phone companies in the world, dominating emerging markets like China, Mexico, and India, all places where I had done a lot of research on how low-income people use technology. And I spent a lot of extra time in China getting to know the informal economy. So I did things like working as a street vendor, selling dumplings to construction workers. Or I did field work, spending nights and days in internet cafes, hanging out with Chinese youth so I could understand how they were using games and mobile phones and using it between moving from the rural areas to the cities. And through all of this qualitative evidence that I was gathering, I was starting to see so clearly that a big change was about to happen among low-income Chinese people. Even though they were surrounded by advertisements for luxury products like fancy toilets, who wouldn't want one, and apartments and cars, through my conversations with them, I found out that the ads that actually enticed them the most were the ones for iPhones, promising them this entry into this high-tech life. And even when I was living with them in urban slums like this one, I saw people investing over half of their monthly income into buying a phone. And increasingly, they were Shanzai, which are affordable knockoffs of iPhones and other brands. They're very usable. Does the job. And after years of living with migrants and working with them and just, really doing everything that they were doing, I started piecing all these data points together. You know, from the things that seemed like random, like me selling dumplings, to the things that were more obvious, like, you know, tracking how much they were spending on their cell phone bills. And I was able to create this much more holistic picture of what was happening. And that's when I started to realize that even the poorest in China would want a smartphone, and that they would do almost anything to get their hands on one. And you have to keep in mind, iPhones had just come out. It was 2009, so this was like 8 years ago. And Androids had just started looking like iPhones. And a lot of very smart and realistic people said, those smartphones, that's just a fad, right? Who wants to carry around these heavy things where batteries drain quickly and they break every time you drop them? But I had a lot of data and I was very confident about my insights. So I was very excited to share them with Nokia. But Nokia was not convinced because it wasn't big data. They said, we have millions of data points and we don't see any indicators of anyone wanting to buy a smartphone. And your data set of 100, as diverse as it is too weak for us to even take seriously. And I said, Nokia, you're right. Of course you wouldn't see this. Because, you know, you're sending out surveys assuming that people don't know what a smartphone is. So of course you're not going to get any data back about people wanting to buy a smartphone in 2 years. Your surveys, your methods have been designed to optimize an existing business model. And I'm looking at these emergent human dynamics that haven't happened yet. We're, you know, looking outside of market dynamics so that we can get ahead of it. Well, you know what happened to Nokia? Their business fell off a cliff. This is the cost of missing something. It was unfathomable. But Nokia is not alone. I see organizations throwing out data all the time because it didn't come from a quant model or it doesn't fit in one. But it's not big data's fault. It's the way we use big data. It's our responsibility. Big data's reputation for success comes from quantifying very specific environments, like electricity power grids or delivery logistics or genetic code. When we're quantifying in systems that are more or less contained, but not all systems are as neatly contained. When you're quantifying in systems that are more dynamic, especially systems that involve human beings, forces are complex and unpredictable. And these are things that we don't know how to model so well. Once you predict something about human behavior, new factors emerge because conditions are constantly changing. That's why it's a never-ending cycle. You think you know something, and then something unknown enters the picture. And that's why just relying on big data alone increases the chance that we'll miss something while giving us this illusion that we already know everything. And what makes it really hard to see this paradox and even like wrap our brains around it is that we have this thing that I call the quantification bias, which is the unconscious belief of valuing the measurable over the immeasurable. And we often maybe experience this at our work. You know, we maybe work alongside colleagues who are like this, or even our whole entire company may be like this, where people become so fixated on that number that they can't see anything outside of it, even when you present them evidence right in front of their face. And this is a very appealing message because there's nothing wrong with quantifying. It's actually very satisfying. I mean, I get a great sense of comfort from looking at an Excel spreadsheet, even very simple ones. It's just kind of like, yes, the formula worked. It's all okay. Everything's under control. But the problem is that quantifying is addictive. And when we forget that, and when we don't have something to kind of keep that in check, it's very easy to just throw out data because it can't be expressed as a numerical value. It's very easy just to slip into silver bullet thinking as if some simple solution existed. Because this is a great moment of danger for any organization. Because oftentimes the future we need to predict, it isn't in that haystack, but it's that tornado that's bearing down on us outside of the barn. There is no greater risk than being blind to the unknown. It can cause you to make the wrong decisions. It can cause you to miss something big. But we don't have to go down this path. It turns out that the Oracle of ancient Greece holds the secret key that shows us the path forward. Now, recent geological research has shown that the Temple of Apollo, where the most famous oracle sat, was actually built over 2 earthquake faults. And these faults would release these petrochemical fumes from underneath the Earth's crust. And the oracle literally sat right above these faults, inhaling enormous amounts of ethylene gas, these fissures. It's true. It's all true. And that's what made her babble and hallucinate and go into this trance-like state. She was high as a kite. So how did anyone get any useful advice out of her in this state? Well, you see those people surrounding the oracle? You see those people holding her up because she's like a little woozy? And you see that guy on your left-hand side holding the orange notebook? Well, those were the temple guides, and they worked hand in hand with the oracle. When inquisitors would come and get on their knees, that's when the temple guides would get to work. Because then after they asked their questions, they would observe their emotional state, and then they would ask them follow-up questions like, hey, why do you want to know this prophecy? Who are you? What are you going to do with this information? And then the temple guides would take this more ethnographic, this more qualitative information and interpret the oracle's babblings. So the oracle didn't stand alone, and neither should our big data systems. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that big data systems are, huffing ethylene gas or that they're even giving invalid predictions. The total opposite. But what I am saying is that in the same way that the oracle needed her temple guides, our big data systems need them too. They need people like ethnographers and user researchers who can gather what I call thick data. This is precious data from humans, like stories, emotions, and interactions that cannot be quantified. It's the kind of data that I collected for Nokia that comes in the form of a very small sample size, but delivers incredible depth of meaning. And what makes it so thick and meaty is the experience of understanding the human narrative. And that's what helps us see what's missing in our models. Thick data grounds our business questions in human questions. And that's why integrating big and thick data forms a more complete picture. Big data is able to offer insights at scale and leverage a best of machine intelligence, whereas thick data can help us rescue the context loss that comes from making big data usable and then leverage the best of human intelligence. And when you actually integrate the two, that's when things get really fun, because then you're no longer just working with data you've already collected. You get to also work with data that hasn't been collected. You get to ask questions about why. Why is this happening? Now, when Netflix did this, they unlocked a whole new way to transform their business. Now, Netflix is known for their really great recommendation algorithm, and they had this $1 million prize for anyone who could improve it. And there were winners. But Netflix discovered that the improvements were only incremental. So to really find out what was going on, they hired an ethnographer, Grant McCracken, to gather thick data insights. And what he discovered was something that they hadn't seen initially in the quantitative data. He discovered that people loved binge watching. In fact, people didn't even feel guilty about it. They enjoyed it. So Netflix was like, oh, this is a new insight. So they went to their data science team and they were able to scale this thick data insight with their quantitative data. And once they verified it and validated it, Netflix decided to do something very simple but impactful. They said, instead of offering the same show from different genres or more of the different shows from similar users, we'll just offer more of the same show. We'll just make it easier for you to binge watch. And they didn't stop there. They did all these things to redesign their entire viewer experience to really encourage binge watching. It's why people and friends disappear for whole weekends at a time, catching up on shows like Masters of None. By integrating big data and thick data, they not only improve their business, but they transform how we consume media. And now their stocks are projected to double in the next few years. But this isn't just about, watching more videos or selling more smartphones. For some, integrating thick data insights into the algorithm could mean life or death, especially for the marginalized. All around the country, police departments are using big data for predictive policing to set bond amounts and sentencing recommendations in ways that reinforce existing biases. NSA's Skynet machine learning algorithm has possibly aided in the deaths of thousands of civilians in Pakistan from misreading cellular device metadata. As all of our lives become more automated, from automobiles to health insurance or to employment, it is likely that all of us will be impacted by the quantification bias. Now, the good news is that we've come a long way from huffing ethylene gas to make predictions. We have better tools, so let's just use them better. Let's integrate the big data with the thick data. Let's bring our temple guides with the oracles. And whether this work happens in companies or nonprofits or government or even in the software, all of it matters. Because that means we're collectively committed to making better data, better algorithms, better outputs, and better decisions. This is how we'll avoid missing that something.
Okay, guys. Well, I tell you what, hopefully you were able to hear that okay. I think you were. I know Zach was saying he was having a problem, but I don't know if there was just an issue on his end, but hopefully you guys were all able to hear that. I know the quality wasn't the best, but I showed that for a very specific reason. Primarily, I know it might not resonate with some of you, and that's okay. But the reason I wanted to show it is because so much of what we do with our clients is based on that dashboard, and it's based on the points, and it's primarily based on their personal data, and it's extremely powerful, really powerful tool. However, we want to be very careful that we don't get too caught up always in just what the dashboard says. We don't want to just focus on the data, because data, if it's not read correctly or processed correctly, could be very misleading. That's why when we created this, or primarily when I designed the business model, I had to think about a few different options. One option was to primarily just market it as a free app and just gather data and primarily make it a free download, and it was just an app. And primarily what would happen is all of it could have been done through artificial intelligence, and it still can be. And again, just like all the free apps, and then or else just once it gets to so many, you go ahead and you'd have a small fee to download the app. But the problem, in my opinion, with building a business model that way, based on what we're doing, is, well, you lose that human interaction, the human narrative, so to speak, and that's critical. Because again, I count on everybody here and the people that are coming on board and the people who are going to come on board down the road to be able to not only interpret that data, but ask questions, and make sure that it's producing the results that the clients desire. Because it's not always just about achievement. It's about fulfillment. And I can tell you right now, if you run the risk of taking lots of action and achieving the results, but you don't feel fulfilled, that's not a good place to be. And I think that's why we need to always have people like you out there working with the clients, not to make this an automated system and it's just all based on the numbers and the data. I think we need to have the big data and the thick data together there. That's primarily what she was talking about when she was talking about the oracle and the guides, the temple guides. The oracle would go ahead and make the predictions. That's the dashboard. But the temple guides, well, basically they asked the questions and they put in the emotion, and primarily they went in and they were the human narrative and side of things, and they were primarily able to go ahead and put their own spin on things and their own interpretation and help support the individual who's looking, for the guidance to begin with. Now, to a degree, that's kind of what we're doing. Again, we're gathering the data and it's a powerful tool. The dashboard is probably one of the most powerful things that we have available to us. But again, we want to be careful not to rely 100% on what that dashboard says. Because I can tell you right now, I can look at dashboards and on paper, they look amazing. But that doesn't mean that person is feeling amazing. That's why the one-to-ones are so important. That's why when you're having the one-to-ones with the client, that yes, you focus on the dashboard, you use it as a guide, but you ask questions. You make sure that they're feeling the results. You make sure that, again, that they're they're achieving what they're looking to achieve out of this program. So I just want to make sure that's the reason I want to show that. And I also wanted to focus on the whole, which might sound a little bit silly, the whole, well, I call it Nokia. It's either Nokia or Nokia, depending on what part of the world you're in, I think. But I tell you why this really resonated with me, and I wouldn't expect anybody here to really understand the significance as much as I did. But I know a lot about Nokia because I was involved at a stage with Nokia, and we used to do a lot of their electronic recycling, and I actually looked after for a couple of years a huge portion of the import of the Nokia product into Ireland. So I know exactly what she was talking about there. When she was talking about how Nokia at one stage, they basically they dominated the mobile industry, the mobile phone industry. They had, I believe it was like 87% of the marketplace at one stage. And well, they did a couple things wrong. They first off, they were very slow to make a decision to get into this to the smartphone business. They thought it was a fad. They were very, I think they were very just complacent. They had such a big market share and they had just been dominating the industry for so long. Well, they just kind of thought that that's always the way it was going to be. But they weren't looking to the future. And so they put off making the decision far too long, and which a lot of times can hurt you more so than the wrong decision, not making a decision. But they put it off for way too long. And when they finally decided to get in, because of their haste, because they were panicking then, and they didn't have enough time to test the marketplace out, and in my opinion anyway, and many others, really do their due diligence, they backed the wrong horse, so to speak. What they did was they actually put Microsoft as the operating system on all of their smartphones. And as we all know, it's the Android that won, the Google product. So again, I don't expect anybody to really understand this maybe to the level that I do, but I understand because I was very involved with that whole thing. And I totally get what she was saying there. But it all came down to the decisions. They put off making the decision for so long, and then because then they were panicked and they made a very, very bad decision, and it cost them. It cost them to the point from they went from having like 87% market share to having less than 1% market share. They basically got wiped out. They're coming back now, but hardly anything at all. They still have a tiny little fraction. They got bought out by a company, HMD. But if you do ever have an interest, that's why I put this up there. Great documentary, Nokia. Right, it's called The Rise and Fall of Nokia. You can get it actually on YouTube, but it's actually a really interesting story. But anyway, won't get into that too much. But I just want to share that with you. But again, more is lost by indecision than wrong decision. That's exactly what Nokia did. Indecision is the thief of opportunity. It'll steal you blind. I do believe that. I do believe, yeah, sometimes you want to take a bit of time and you want to think things through, but don't put decisions off just because you're afraid of them. Don't put them off because they're too difficult, require too much work. You have to make hard decisions. And you have to, the reason I'm spending so much time on this, you have to make sure you share that with your clients. That when you can identify when the client is opening up to you and they're talking to you and they're sharing things with you about their relationships or with their finances or their health, whatever the case may be, you can usually spot if they're just too afraid to make a decision. So again, non-directive, we're not telling anybody what to do, but you can always encourage. You can always kind of give them a little gentle nudge in the proper way. But again, indecision is worse than wrong decision, in my opinion. So, what does Tony, my good friend Tony Robbins, have to say about decisions? Well, you would have heard me talk about this many times before, but I got to run by it again. I'll be quick on it. But Tony always talks about primarily the most important 3 decisions that you're ever going to make. And it's true. But there's 3 decisions specifically that you have to make, we all make, and we make them on a consistent basis, but they're going to shape your life. The first, what you're going to focus on. That's in our system, what you focus on. Again, you're always going to be focused on something. Either you're going to consciously make a decision what to focus on, or your mind is just going to catch something that attracts its attention, and your focus is going to go there. But you're always focused on something. So make the decision. Be proactive. Again, that's why it's incorporated into our system. But again, focus is the first thing. So you have to make a decision each and every day and throughout the day where you're going to direct your focus. Be aware of it. Be conscious of it. And again, remind this to your clients as well. But that's the first one. The second, what does it mean? Okay, so yeah, you want to go ahead and you're going to direct your focus. You're going to decide what to focus on. But then you have to make a determination of what does that mean to you? Again, that's all interpretation. And you can use the power of questions, but to make a decision as far as what it means. But whatever you decide, because it's all, perception. In the majority of things, there is really no truth to the majority of things. It's all your interpretation and your perception of things. But you decide. You have the power to decide what to focus on, and whatever you're focusing on, decide what it means. So if you have the choice, if you have the power to decide what it means, why not just make the right choice? Decide is something that's going to empower you. But I can tell you right now, whatever you decide it means to you is going to directly impact the third which is decide what you're going to do about it. You decide what to focus on. You decide what it means, and then and that's going to ultimately push you in a direction to make the decision as far as what you're going to do about it. Are you going to act? Are you going to react? Are you going to move in a positive direction, or are you going to go into a negative state, depending on what something means. So, for an example, if somebody comes home, your spouse, your partner, your significant other, and you've been working hard all day, and you've cleaned the place up, and you've made dinner, and you've done this lovely thing, and that person comes walking in, and they just, whatever reason, they come in a negative state, and maybe they say some things. They don't even pay attention to the food you made or how clean the house is, and they just go ahead and they start giving out about, why didn't you do this? I thought I asked you to do that. Right away, you're focusing on what they're saying. You're making the determination. What does it mean? And naturally so, your chances are you're going to make a decision that, well, it means that they don't care, they're inconsiderate, they're rude, they don't love me, or, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't really mean that that's true. You could direct your mind to think, oh, they must have really I wonder what happened. They must have had a really hard day today. I wonder if there's something I can do to help. And again, I'm not saying it's easy, but you've got the power within you to make that decision. And depending on what you decide it means, I can guarantee you 100% of the time, it's going to directly impact what you're going to do about it, how you're going to react to that situation. So again, just think about that the next time. 3 things. All of us have to make the decision all the time. What we focus on, what it means to us, which is going to impact what we decide to do about it. So Oprah's got a really good one. And this actually is so true. Only make decisions that support your self-image, self-esteem, and self-worth. It's like what we said earlier about purpose. Make decisions that are moving you closer to achieving your definite major purpose. That should be the basis of all the decisions you're making. Is this, go ahead, it's supporting my self-esteem, as Oprah says. My self-image, give me a stronger self-worth. But things that are going to empower you. You have to put choice, you have the power to make those decisions. I always like Jim Rohn, as you know. Jim Rohn always says, you cannot make progress without making decisions. And that's very true. But the flip side, you cannot fail without making decisions. Because again, you might make a decision not to act, not to make a decision, not to do something, not to make that phone call, not to acknowledge that individual, not to respond in the proper way to that situation. And again, that's the exact opposite of what he's saying here, but it's the truth. You can't make progress without making decisions, but you cannot fail without making decisions as well. So we started out with a quick Mel, and we're going to finish it up here. Just a quick one. It's only 4 minutes, but it's a really good hack that she gives here. So I'm just going to double check to make sure. Just do me a favor, guys. If you can't hear it, just unmute and let me know, because I know somebody said the last time they couldn't hear it, but it all looked fine on my end. So if there's any problems, just unmute and let me know, and I'll check the settings. But hopefully everybody will be able to hear this okay. It's only about 4 minutes, but it's a really powerful one, I think, to end with. So, a simple hack to make the best decision by Mel Robbins.
Put you in the exact same situation, facing the exact same thing that your friend is. You're not able to be so objective, and you don't make that great a decision. Today, I want to introduce you to a Jedi mind trick that I use all the time whenever I have a really important decision to make, or I can feel that I'm starting to get really emotional about something. So what I want to teach you is the power of objectivity. Researchers at the University of Waterloo and the University of Michigan have studied how people make decisions, and they've discovered something really interesting. If your friend is facing a problem, when you have to make decisions on behalf of your friend, you tend to think from multiple perspectives, you think about multiple outcomes, and ultimately you make a much better decision. What they found in research, though, is if they put you in the exact same situation, facing the exact same thing that your friend is, you're not able to be so objective because you're emotional, and you don't make that great a decision. What's the conclusion? Well, when you make decisions for other people, you're great. When we make decisions for ourselves, decisions that can be emotional, we're not so good at it. That's where the power of objectivity comes in. It's the ability to make a decision from a third party's perspective. Let me explain. So if you're facing a really important decision and you can feel yourself getting emotional, maybe you're thinking about asking for a raise or changing your career or changing your major or ending a relationship or starting a relationship, whatever it may be. If it's something that is emotional for you, you're going to have a hard time thinking about all the options, and you're going to be really attached emotionally because maybe you're concerned about the people who may be impacted by your decision. Maybe you're managing that somebody's going to be disappointed or hurt by what you need to do for you. This is when the power of objectivity is really important. Pick somebody that you really admire. I mean, it could be somebody like a Bill Gates or a Richard Branson or an Oprah Winfrey, or maybe you have a mentor, and stop yourself and ask, what would Oprah do in this situation? What would Richard Branson do in this situation? What would your mentor do in this situation? Bringing that level of third-party objectivity will yank you out of your body and your emotions, and it will help you give yourself the perspective that you need and the distance from your emotions so that you can actually assess your options and make the best decision for you. What would Mel do if Mel were making the decision, the best decision? You know, there's a really interesting example of somebody who did this in sports, and at the time, he actually got a lot of flack for it. It was LeBron James. Now, LeBron James, as you know, played for the Cleveland Cavaliers for a really, really long time, and he's arguably one of the best basketball players to ever hit the NBA. So he made this announcement that he was going to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he had been playing forever, had rabid fans, and he was going to leave them and go to Miami.
Miami Heat. That was the conclusion you woke up with this morning.
That was the conclusion I woke up with this morning.
He was giving an interview to ESPN, and what he said was this. He said, LeBron James needs to do what's best for LeBron James. Now, people kind of laughed at him because it's a funny way to say the sentence, but this guy's really smart. He was leveraging the power of objectivity. Mel Robbins needs to learn how to do what's best for Mel Robbins, and you need to learn how to do what's best for you. And your life, your work, it all comes back to the decisions that you make. So the next time that you're facing a really important decision, or you start to feel that you're getting wrapped around the axle because you're thinking about what everybody else is going to think, or how this is going to impact people that you care about, stop. Take a step back, leverage the power of objectivity, and do what is actually best for you.
Okay, Mel. Yeah, that's some great advice, I think. Do what's right for you, but the whole objectivity of it is powerful because it's true. Like I know, and you're probably very same, when you're working with clients, it's so easy to go ahead and they're struggling, and you just want to tell them, look, this is all you need to do. But it's not always that easy when you're in that situation. It's easy to be the third party, the outsider looking in, and know exactly what to tell somebody what to do. But it is a great little technique that you can advise them on. Because again, we're not directing anybody what to do. We're just trying to help support them and try to get them to make the right decisions for themselves. But that's a really powerful tip that she just gave. You know, if they can take themselves out of that situation and look at it more objectively, as if they were a third party and giving advice to somebody else. Even if you were to turn it on to them and say, so if you were the consultant and I was the client with the same situation, what would you tell me to do? It's a powerful technique and it works. So look, guys, we're gonna wrap it up there. Went on a little bit longer than we thought. So I do apologize, a couple minutes over there. So the only thing I want to say is I need a volunteer, if possible, if somebody would be willing to help out. I had mentioned to you before that I may be heading to the States. It looks like I'm going to head this weekend. I've got some family issues over there I got to deal with. So I'm chances are it's looking like I'm going to head off this weekend. Don't know how long I'll be gone. Minimum of a week, maybe two. I really haven't made up my mind yet. But regardless, I'll still be available over there. I'm still going to be working remotely and everything else, but I'll probably be a little bit because of the lag time, because of the time difference and situation I'm work from where I'm working out of and everything else. So if anybody is interested, I've mentioned this to you a few times before, as far as you doing the training, one of the individuals who come to the training here, if you have some topic that you think that you would be able to do a good presentation on, and you would be able to, again, good valid information that you can share with the group, and you would like to, next Tuesday would be a good opportunity for you, because I'm not going to be here. So I am looking for someone to step in and look out for it. Now, all else fails, what I'll do is I'll do recording, and I'll get it uploaded onto the area, or somebody can be the host. They can just play my recording. But I just think it'd be a good opportunity for somebody, again, anybody at all, as long as it's good information that's going to be useful to the group, and you're confident enough that you can do it. Look, I'm not an expert presenter at all. I don't claim to be. But as long as you can, present it in a format that's going to be useful, and the people are going to be able to walk away, it's not going to be a waste. And again, I'm not suggesting anybody would do that, but it'd be a good opportunity. So if you do feel you have something and you would like to volunteer and step in, I would greatly appreciate it. If not, don't worry about it. There'll be something sorted out for next Tuesday. But again, I'll know for sure, but I'm definitely heading out over the next few days. I'm just looking at things right now, but I'm definitely going to be heading out, but I still will be available. I'll still be in touch, and I'll still be, accessible. So anyway, other than that, guys, have a great night. I greatly appreciate everybody showing up, and apologies for running a few minutes over, and we will see everybody next week. Okay? See you soon. Or you won't see me next week, maybe, but you'll see somebody here. All right.